It was about a month ago that I drove this Cadillac ELR, the same color as a matter of fact, for a quick spin review. And now that I've had a chance to spend a week with it, I can give you the full scoop in a TFL good, bad, and beautiful review. And that is coming up next on the Fast Lane Car. If it wasn't for the Corvette, I would say that this ELR is by far the most beautiful car that General Motors builds. I mean, look at it. It looks like somebody took a coupe and just stretched it, just pulled it back. This is a cliche, but it's absolutely true. This car looks like it's moving when it's standing still. Every time I drive it somewhere, people stop and gawk at it. There are very few American cars that have that much road presence, and the ELR has it. So, I call this the good, the bad, and the beautiful review. So let's talk about that. First and foremost, the good. I know this is an expensive car, $80,000. That's a lot of money for a Cadillac. But you know what? Driving it like I am right now on electricity, I feel special. And really, when you're paying a lot of money for a car, what you want is to feel special. Cadillac says that you can get up to 38 miles on a complete charge. I think more realistic is 30, especially if you live someplace that's not this warm like Florida, where the batteries aren't at their optimal temperature all the time. But 30 miles on all electricity is certainly enough to get you to work, plug it back in, get you home. So realistically, you could potentially own this car for as long as you have it without ever having to use a lot of gas. Charging the ELR is not as simple as it might seem. First, you need to find a 110 volt plug and of course this charger. That's simple enough. But if this thing is completely out of juice, it will take between 13 and 18 hours to recharge it. And when you think about it, that's longer than overnight. If you're lucky enough to have one of those dryer plugs that's 240 volts, then you've got a 5-hour recharge time. Otherwise, you gotta wait a long time. Now, Cadillac says, according to the Monroney, that you're gonna get 82 mpge or mpg equivalent when you're driving in all-electric mode like I am now. However, if you want to take it across the country and you want to use a gasoline engine, then you're going to get 33 mpg, which is also respectable. Realistically, it's probably going to be a mix of those two, and that's Prius territory. Let's say you're at 50 or at 60, because sometimes you're using the gasoline engine and sometimes you're not. Now, speaking of the gasoline engine, it has a 1.4 liter engine that for all you Europeans is very similar to the one in the new Opel Adam, and it's incredibly quiet. I can't hear it. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to switch the car using this button from touring mode, which is what it defaults to, which is basically electric mode, past sport mode, past mountain mode, and into hold mode. And what hold mode does is basically turn on the gasoline engine so that, there it is, so that it saves the electric batteries for when you want them, like tooling around on an island. Now, can you hear the difference? I can't. Let's floor it. Instant torque, engine's on, can't hear it. Now, you probably know that the ELR is based on the Chevy Volt, but comparing this $80,000 ELR to a $40,000 Volt is kind of like comparing a Citroën DS to an SM. Okay, I know, that's way inside baseball. Let's try jet ski to yacht. This is a very different vehicle. It looks different and it drives differently, and that's because it has over 50 more horsepower for a combined electric and gasoline output of 207 horsepower and 295 pound-foot of torque. That's a little bit more. Actually, that's a lot more than the Chevy Volt. Now, of course, the way that the ELR works is that the gasoline engine, for the most part, there's an exception to this that we won't go into, but for the most part, just charges the batteries, which then drive the front wheels. And of course, like all EVs, or most EVs, you have a regenerative mode. So using these paddle shifters, and it's kind of a fun game, when I push them back, they don't actually shift, but they throw the car into regen mode. So it's kind of like using the brakes, except for that you're putting power back in the battery. It's really a fun way to drive. Clever touch, GM, and something that you can play with when you have this car. The interior of the ELR is absolutely gorgeous. Just a really unique blend of wood, fiber accent, chrome, and leather. They've taken a lot of time and put a lot of effort into making this a really nice place to be. That is, as long as you're in the front seats. There are 4 seats in this car, but the back seats are best left for groceries or little kids. In terms of competition, there's not a lot. Maybe the Tesla Model S, maybe the new BMW i8, sort of kind of the Volt, sort of kind of the Leaf, and it kind of falls in between the Tesla and of course the i8, in that you can get a Tesla for right around $70,000, but of course that's all electric, and of course you can get the new i8, but that's going to be much more expensive. In my opinion, all 3 cars are just absolutely stunners to look at, and that gets to the beautiful part of this car. It really is GM's best looking car if I take the Corvette out of the equation. All right, and here's the biggest fly in the ointment. It's Cadillac's, let me start up. There it is, Q system. It's just not ready for prime time yet. What ends up happening is you've got these haptic controls that are very modern and are very space age, but sometimes they work and sometimes they don't work. For instance, if I slide my finger across this bottom part, it should open up, and that time it worked. But if I do it gently like that, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And it's really frustrating. I'm not sure that the engineers actually tested this in a car that's moving down the road, because it's very simple to hit the button on the radio station when you're standing still, but when the car is bouncing and you're bouncing, these little controls are too small and they just don't work. Of course, there is a $7,500 tax credit, federal, which helps offset the pain, as well as wherever your state, wherever you happen to be in America, there's also state tax credit. So yeah, it's not quite $80,000, but nevertheless, it's a lot of money for a Cadillac. Second problem are the brakes. Right there, I'm throwing a lot of power back in the battery, but they are not linear. They are grabby, they are not progressive, and I just don't have a sense of any real brake feel. Because otherwise, this car has really good road feel. It's well dampened, it doesn't bang or pound you up when it goes over potholes. You can really tell where the wheels are. It feels very European. I think that GM has done their homework on the Nürburgring, especially with the V-Series cars, and it's translated directly to a very well and, I would say, European polished driving experience when you get behind the ELR, except for the brakes, of course. Here's something that's not right. Look at this, it doesn't quite line up. For an $80,000 car, that is something that should be exactly lined up. I know that it's a small niggle, but I promise you the German competition, if there were anything besides the BMW i8, that would not occur. At an as-tested MSRP of almost $80,000, the ELR isn't cheap. In fact, it's very expensive, and I've been racking my brain trying to think of a car that gives you less horsepower for more money. But of course, this isn't about horsepower, and there aren't very many cars that compete against it. So, it's absolutely beautiful, it drives well, and Cadillac's Q system is incredibly exasperating. So on the TFL scale of buy it, lease it, rent it, or forget it, I'm gonna give it a lease it. What I would do with this car is wait till somebody else buys it, have it come off lease, and then buy it myself. In other words, let somebody else take the depreciation and of course the tax credit, but that way you'll end up with a beautiful electric hybrid. As always, this is Roman reporting for the Fast Lane Car from beautiful and sunny Marco Island. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Ciao. Now somebody may be thinking, it's just a tarted up Volt. You are wrong. Not only is the styling absolutely gorgeous, but the use of the materials in here, expensive materials, is way beyond anything you'll find in a Volt. Plus, I'm driving in a cocoon of radar-based safety. I've got blindside monitoring. I've got adaptive cruise control. And best of all, when I cross over a yellow line like right now, I get a little bit of a tush waggle, a little boogie woogie, should I say, in my behind because the seat vibrates, letting me know that I've done something that perhaps is unsafe. It's a little disconcerting at first, but after a while, it's kind of fun.